I have to like take a second and put
I
my
know.
like
I
host
get
face
it.
on.
I get it. It's funny. You do this however many times, and
hmm
it's still.
Still a little nerve wracking.
Yeah.
What's up, legends, and welcome to a very special interview. Basically, to make a short story long, Restoration Games had a deck design contest where fans of the game, like you and me, could submit their own decks and have them get reviewed, and basically, Restoration would pick the best ones and make them into official decks that would get made into real sets someday. Well, the first of those sets is finally here. Houdini versus the Genie features two characters that were finalists, one of the four finalists, two of the four finalists of the deck design contest, and it's exciting because both of the decks are really cool. But anyways, because both of those decks were made by just people, I said, hey, it'd be really cool to interview them and just hear their thoughts and kind of get to know them a little bit more and the process behind the deck that they helped create. And of course, official decks are also made by people, but we are just mere mortals compared to the pedestals we put the restoration team on. So, anyways, today I sat down with Sam, who created Houdini's deck, and just asked him some questions about his wonderful creation. So, hopefully, you find it as informative and insightful and just amazing as I did to actually talk to him, and hopefully, you just enjoy listening to our conversation. So, without further ado, I present Sam, the creator of Houdini. All right, so I am here with Pajama Sam, aka Sam Crane, aka the creator of the Houdini deck. Sam, would you just like to give yourself a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah. So I was one of the four winners of the design contest, and really happy to be here talking about the deck and maybe sharing some stuff behind the scenes. Excited to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. That'll be awesome. I'm so glad I can get some exclusive details from you. So I'm gonna steal a page out of the Defender Resolves First podcast because whenever they have someone on for the first time, they always ask them what their unmatched origin story is, basically like how they got into the game. So Sam, what is your unmatched origin story?
Oh man. So I guess I don't know. I've been playing board games for a while. I actually hated board games in college. I was probably not super fun to play with, but um, got into board games actually with my wife and have been kind of playing for the last couple years. And um, just at a game shop one day, and some guy who was demoing the game showed it to me. Played, I think it was like Medusa and Sinbad, and it was so much fun. It like instantly clicked with me,
Mm-hmm.
and went home, figured out how to buy the game, bought the game, played it a couple times with my wife, and I was like, it was exactly what I was wanting at that time. I'd just come off kind of like a string of two-player games I wasn't super excited about, so it just like meshed perfectly. It was so fun to play that game, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Are there any other like favorite board games you have besides just Unmatched?
Oh boy, a lot. No, it kind of changes as I go through seasons. Right now, I'm really loving kind of like more like the heavier games I like are. I love War of the Ring. That's
Okay.
probably my favorite game. I just played Twilight Imperium for like the first time earlier this year,
Mm-hmm.
which was awesome. But I also love. I'm in like a kind of an easier game mood. Like I love Santorini is amazing. Unmatched, of course. Uh, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay. I've heard of all those games, but I haven't played them myself. But I
Oh man, there. I tell you what. The first time I played War of the Ring, it's like it's a legit 10 to 15 hour investment for you have any idea of what's going on in
oh
that
my
game.
goodness.
Like it's. I think we played it twice, and even after the end of the second play, it was like I don't know if I'm doing this right,
hmm
but it's so much fun. It's a blast, especially if you like the Lord of the Rings movie.
hmm So you seem like a man with a pretty good taste. And I know you've gone on the record saying that Bruce Lee was your favorite unmatched character. Is that still true?
I think so. I think when we when we originally did that interview, I think the sets that were out were the first core set, and then the Robin Hood and Bigfoot, and then I think Bruce Lee, maybe the Jurassic Park set. I can't remember.
Hmm.
And I really loved Bruce Lee just because. So I'm a huge fan of like the just the original kind of 30 card deck with nothing crazy going
Hmm.
on, and so I think that was the first deck I played where it was felt so much more unique with like the action gain stuff,
Hmm.
and it kind of had like a little bit of getting cards back like Sinbad has, but um, I had so much fun playing it, and so that I still really like Bruce Lee to this day. I don't get to play probably as much as I'd like to, but I have played probably some of the other characters I really like. Moon Knight's really great,
Hmm.
just because I really like the timing with him, um, and like trying to go in and attack with Khonshu and then coming back out later, and then I'd say Achilles is really fun too because he's
Yeah.
just a beast to kind of go in and attack a bunch of times. So that's a lot of fun. But those are probably my top three. Other than of course, like Houdini has a special place
Hmm.
in my heart. So
I was gonna say, yeah, Houdini probably like has to be your favorite.
I
Just
know, I know.
okay, so that's very interesting. I'm an Achilles fan as well, and Bruce has always been in like my top three. But now Houdini has probably a good shot for to be there. But
I know. I
so
think Houdini has like a little bit of like he's got a little bit of the action gain, kind of
mhm,
like what Bruce has, and like
yeah,
explosiveness. But
it's probably the
you
most
know,
explosive character in the
yeah,
game. Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
And he also kind of works like with that timing a little bit, like
Hmm.
to kind of to pick the times that you want to go in and really go hard. So maybe there's a little bit of all those characters in that somehow. But yeah, no, that's super fun.
So before the contest, had you thought about designing your own decks at all?
I kind of came. I can't remember when exactly the contest was in relation to everything else.
Hmm.
I think I found Unmatched um, like not too long before the contest. So I had played it a few times, and I had gotten on. I think BGG has like a notes section or something that people were posting decks to, and some of them. I think the one that really I thought was cool was I think somebody posted a Mandalorian deck, and I really thought that was cool. I thought it was so cool that people were like designing their own stuff for
Hmm.
the game. I'd never thought about that, and they were using Jonathan's tool, the Unmatched Maker, and so I think I had kind of played a little bit with that. I can't remember if I have a couple characters that I had made just for fun, and I can't remember like if it was before or after, but I had never really like nothing real.
Hmm.
I never had like I don't think I had posted anything or like made anything public. I was always too nervous to do that. But so not anything like I had put out public. I played a little bit with it, but not much.
Yeah, I know. I have like a couple decks that I've just kind of like thrown together, and I definitely do not think they would hold up to public scrutiny. So,
I know it's a little nervous. That's why the contest was so great because you got to submit, and if it's bad, nobody ever sees it.
yeah. So when you were entering the contest, were you doing it like just to see like how good of a deck you could make, or did you really want to win, or just like kind of enjoy the experience?
Oh, I honestly I thought I had no shot at winning, so I was shocked to even like think I was considered when they even parsed it down to the original whatever 36 it was. But I don't know. I think I just thought like it sounds fun. Like what is there to even lose? Like I it's really great. It kind of sounds maybe a little nerdy, but it's a good creative outlet. I felt like I think I had made a couple just of my own, and it's cool to like take a character and think of what you can do within a deck of cards to make them feel like themselves.
Hmm.
And so it was more so just like this is fun and it's a fun challenge to try to like especially like public domain characters like IP characters are kind of easy because they are in their stories and you just kind of go with that, but it's just a fun challenge to try to think of, a deck that worked with these characters. And so that's really all it was. That's the only reason I entered. Um, I thought my decks were kind of, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't think I'd win with Houdini, even if I came. I mean, not that I thought I actually had a shot, but I thought my other deck that I submitted would be the one that I would even have a shot with. So it was kind of funny that I ended up winning with Houdini in the first place.
Do you have the liberty of saying what the other deck you
Oh
thought
yeah,
was?
I didn't mean to be secretive about it. Yeah, no, it's so I did. My other submission was Father Time, and it was, which I first off I thought would be super cool with like unmatched art and that kind of time stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that could have been really fun, but mostly it was, this was pre me knowing that they don't particularly like exhaustion decks, but at the time I thought exhaustion decks would be pretty cool. So it was more so about like attacking the person, and instead of taking damage, they would draw cards for each damage that they took. And I thought it was really cool because it kind of forced them to play aggressively, like boosting their movements or boosting cards.
Yeah.
And uh, so many pun names. Like I had one that was like time heals all wounds, which was like everybody gains 2 health and draws a card. Like I think there was like too much time on your hands, where it was like it was equal to the amount of cards that your opponent was holding. Like so many great names. I thought that deck was really fun, and I thought it was a lot more cohesive. Houdini was really cool. I loved the Houdini deck. My wife actually really liked that one too, but I felt like it was a little less focused. Like it was like a whole bunch of ideas jam packed into the deck, and while it was really cool, I thought I had a lot of cool ideas with it. It didn't feel as refined as my other one, but I don't think they ended up caring about that in the end. They just thought they saw these cool ideas and thought, hey, that's awesome. So no, I was really surprised that I was even in the conversation for it. So
And so, I guess if we're going to talk specifically about Houdini now, what idea did you have first? Did you go in thinking that you were going to make a Houdini deck, or did you just kind of like think about the deck mechanics and like Houdini was just like an obvious fit for it?
no, Houdini wasn't even in the conversation when I originally thought of the decks. I was really struggling with like who I would do for the contest. And I remember I originally made a list of like 4 or 5 characters, trying to think of what I would do for them, what kind of inspired me a little bit. And I think I had like Peter Pan, and I think I even had Achilles at the time. And Restoration allowed us to email them and kind of check characters to see if they were okay with IP and stuff. And I got the wink wink from Justin not to do Achilles. So glad I didn't waste my time with that. But I was just looking for something to do with these characters. I think I had about 2 or 3 decks like halfway done, and I didn't really know what to do with the rest of them. And so I just started thinking about things that I could push within the current rule set of the game. Because kind of like I said, I really love. I like a lot of the characters that exist now with like tokens and extra cards or less cards or all those weird abilities.
Yeah.
Those are really cool. But I really liked the confinement of like a 30 card deck and figuring out like what's something new that I could do within those 30 cards that would feel really fresh, and started thinking about actual mechanics for the cards. So like card tricks. And I thought, well, I can't do like card tricks because people don't know how to do magic. I don't even know how to do magic. And then so I had like, I was trying to think of, okay, how could I even do a character that would be like card tricks within this deck of cards? So I had one of the first cards that inspired the entire deck, which actually didn't make it in, was called Pick a Card, Any Card. And it was like, I can't remember what the final version ended up being, but it was like somebody drawled up to their full hand size, and then you got to pick a card out and reveal the boost value and either did damage or healed you or whatever it ended up being. But that's the card that kind of inspired the deck. And there are some of those that made it into the final deck. But it really started out as kind of a card trick deck. And Houdini was on my radar, but Houdini and card tricks didn't really connect enough for me to feel like I wanted to use them. And so I kind of started just like looking at other magician characters, and nothing really caught my eye. And that's when I went back to Houdini and thought, well, he's got all this escape stuff. This could be great for like defensive things and an ability. And so I kind of toned down the card tricks a little bit. I did a bunch of research on Houdini, so I wasn't totally blasphemous. He did some card tricks in his early career, so it wasn't nuts to do that. But toned some of that stuff down. Kind of went more of like an escape artist route, and so Houdini actually was kind of just the thing to complete the deck. The start of it really wasn't even starting from Houdini, which is totally backwards from how I've done all the other kind of fun decks I've done.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's kind of like a combination of both, and
yeah,
choosing the character brought it all together. I really like that.
Yeah, I think it worked really well. I mean, the original cards that I think ended up making it into the deck were For My Next Trick. From the original version, not from. I had like a development version too, but my original submission, For My Next Trick, I believe Sleight of Hand, I think changed a little bit. The original Sleight of Hand was if you boosted with Sleight of Hand, I think it was like a 1 boost value, but you got to take it back. So it didn't, because I wanted Houdini to boost a bunch, but I didn't want him to totally drain his cards. And I thought it was cool, like kind of having actually take this card back kind of a thing. So I had those ideas. So Houdini was, it kind of like closed off the character. And I think a lot of his other abilities kind of made that character whole.
So for maybe people who aren't as familiar with the deck, like what would you say makes Houdini unmatched? Like what's his thing? What makes him unique?
Oh man. I think as the character kind of turned out, his boost tricks were, I think, what set him apart from everybody else. Because I think that's one of the things that I know Restoration really loved about it, was that it cared which cards you boost with, and it gave you those options. So having these cards with multiple options, and not just having like really strong like 5s and 6s and stuff like that, like being able to almost create your own card or create your own trick made Houdini really unique. And I think that's what's so cool about him, is that he faces up against the other character with some of the lowest value cards, but he's able to kind of pick his timing and turn really opportune moments into, big hits for him, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I will just take a second and gush about like the boost mechanic, because I just think it's so dang cool, and I really like how there's basically 2 ways to use every card, because you can use it for the actual effect, you can use it for the boost effect, and like figuring out which one to use depending on the game state. I love that. I love it so much.
Yeah, it turned out so cool how it ended up, and I think it's just so fun to be flexible, and I think that's really like his strength, is his flexibility and what he can do in a given moment. So I'm so happy with how that turned out.
And how did you go about trying to balance the strengths and weaknesses of this deck? Because I think it can do a lot of things really well. Like it can hit you pretty hard, but I guess, like you said, it has some pretty low value. So like what approach did you take to making it feel balanced?
Honestly, I don't know that I ever thought too much about balance, to be honest. Like my focus more was on like fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I really paid attention to like how fun were cards to play, and I think important like how fun was it for your opponent to play against them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like something like sleight of hand, which is the card that lets you basically pick your next attack card if it doesn't get fainted. That feels like a really scary card to play against,
Yes.
but I think in practice it's not as scary as you might think it would be, like because the boost value is so important for Houdini. It's like that 3 and draw a card is almost as important as the actual effect. So I never I never really thought about. I mean, I thought a little bit about it, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like my focus wasn't on balance necessarily. It was just like how fun do things feel to play against, and how fun does it feel to play it. And the couple times I was able to kind of play test against friends and figure some of this stuff out, I was able to like tweak values and tone down things. But as far as balance with like card abilities and stuff, I just wanted what was fun. Um, and the values were the things that kind of changed from there. So with like health and how hard he's hitting or how much defense he has. But yeah, the abilities I think are the what make him fun.
I will give a spoiler warning to anyone that hasn't played this deck, but it is one of the funnest decks in the entire game. So
Yeah,
I think you nailed that aspect.
I'm so stoked with how everybody's reaction to both Houdini and Genie. It's so fun to see it come to life and finally come out. So
Mm-hmm. So after you had that kind of like baseline of the card trick mechanics that you wanted, and then you picked Houdini, like how important was it to make the deck feel thematic versus maybe
mm.
like fun, as you said?
So that's kind of it's honestly it's really important to me. That's how I have done all my designs,
Mm-hmm.
just my personal stuff is kind of coming from the theme part of it. Like anytime I am just kind of bored and want to do a new character, that's my process. Is first thing is to write down like a bunch of cool card names that I think could work as card names, and then I think of like, okay, what abilities would work with those card names, and then I go and Google some pictures and try to find ones that match, and maybe those in pictures inspire other cards, and so that's kind of the usual thing I do when I want to create a new character. And with Houdini kind of going the backwards route of focusing on the mechanics first and letting everything else kind of come with it, I I didn't feel like I I didn't start from my normal like thought process. And so I think and it's weird because I think this theme is still there. It's still a tricky magician and an escape artist, and someone that's matching up with you not with values but with the ability to do all this other little stuff. And I think I think the theme really came for me at least with like all this card art and seeing the finished deck and playing it and feeling what it could do with those mechanics that I had in mind while I was designing it. I think it all just kind of like lined up and worked really well all together.
And I see what you mean with the card names, because all of these cards, they're pretty like, I guess I don't want to say like obvious names, but it's just like oh yeah, he's a magician, so this
Yeah.
happens. And the I think all the cards basically just fit the name perfectly.
Yeah, yeah. It ended up really really cool. I actually had, I mean, well, I don't know if we'll go through some of these individual cards, but it's fun to kind of see how they've all changed
Mm-hmm.
since. I mean, I kind of joked to myself a little bit that I came in fourth with the design contest out of four because my deck has changed so much since its original submission. But it is cool to like look through each card and kind of see what I was originally thinking when I designed it, and then kind of its final product. So
Okay. Do you have any examples of like cards that have changed off the top of your head?
Oh yeah, just about every one of them. It's like I'd say probably, man, one of my favorite cards. Well, two of my favorite cards. So first one was Illusion of My Own Design. Um, that one, the original idea for it was Houdini could boost either card in the combat. So he could boost even his opponent's card or boost his own card, and that the loser or the winner of the combat took, I think it was like 2 or 3 damage. So Houdini plays like a 4, and the opponent plays like a 3. And so maybe Houdini wants to boost his opponent's card, do a boost trick, and then loses the combat or the whatever it ended up being. It created an interesting decision that there are some options where it was better for him to boost his opponent's card if it was kind of an even combat, and so he would even get a boost trick off of it and be able to do some damage from the card itself. I really loved that idea. And there was a similar idea with All Part of the Show. The original version was that you could boost your opponent's card. So it would kind of give you a bigger window of, maybe Houdini's, and it was a 0 value. So maybe Houdini's at like 6 health, and, somebody attacks him with a 4, and Houdini wants to boost with a 2 to kill himself, but it actually is all part of the show and he reappears somewhere else. So it's fun to kind of see, like, it's toning him down because of power and everything, but it's kind of fun to see like all these different cards, how they changed and where they ended up. And I think it works so well as a deck now. But
was his ability always the same?
The ability actually changed. So my original submission had 5, 4 or 5. The 5 defenses were all of his kind of famous escapes. So like the milk can escape and the mirror cuff and the underwater escape, and they all had different effects. They all generally did the same thing, but they all, you could boost them, but they had different effects based on what kind of escape it was. So I think the mirror cuffs had something to do with doing something with your hand, like cards you were holding or something like that. And the ability that went along with that was if you won your defense, any defense combats, you got to put your fighter anywhere. So it actually wasn't an offensive ability initially. And they just, and in talking about it, they really like abilities that you can pick to activate when you want to activate them, like every turn. And so we kind of moved that ability onto the Grand Escape card, which is kind of a combination of all those ones that I picked, and then changed the ability to kind of encourage some more boosting with, the maneuvers.
Yeah, I think this ability is crazy. You can go
It's
anywhere.
so fun. It's so fun. And again, like you think it's a little, it is very strong, but it doesn't actually feel like too strong while you're playing it. It feels like it works with all the other cards, which is so cool.
And it encourages you to boost. It makes everything very cohesive, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was the change that really kind of turned it up a notch with like all the boost tricks. With that, it really worked.
Yeah. And so we haven't really talked about Bess at all so far, but like what role do you think she plays in the deck? Because in real life, she was Houdini's stage assistant and wife, right?
Yep, both. So it's funny, Bess wasn't actually a part of my initial deck, 'cause Houdini was a solo fighter. And when they originally announced that we were, the final, whatever it was, or like the final 4 with the 8 runner-ups, we all got on a call with Restoration, and they talked about kind of their vision of like what the next, I don't know, 6 sets were. And the first one was the Houdini and Genie set. And they really loved both of our fighters, and like big bonus was that it just seemed to work so well within a pack together.
Yeah.
And their one kind of holdback was that they both were solo fighters, and they weren't sure if they wanted to put two solo fighters in a pack. And they thought, well, can somebody, if one of you can do a sidekick, that would be really awesome. And I thought, yeah, I can do magician's assistant. That would be great to put in. And so I think Bess changed a lot while I was designing her. I think originally her main function was actually to help Houdini kind of prepare tricks. She had a mechanic where you could like set aside certain boost cards to. I guess what I'm saying, this will all sound very confusing because things have changed so much in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a mechanic where you could set aside certain cards and choose to reveal them or boost them if Bess was still in the match,
Mm-hmm.
as kind of an analog to like her being your assistant, kind of behind the scenes or whatever, setting stuff up. And so you could set aside maybe some stronger boost cards after you discarded them for some reason, and be able to use those later. And she had a couple other uses, and I think her final kind of way of being in the deck is maybe not so much utility, but just kind of gives Houdini a little bit more breathing room with the sidekick, and also is just a little bit more HP. I think Smoke and Mirrors is a really important card in this deck with Houdini, only having 14 health. And I think she's also she's kind of sneaky because both Flourish and Sleight of Hand and For My Next Trick are all any cards.
Yeah.
And a person might not necessarily expect like a 7 damage card to come from Bess. And I think that's really fun when you pull that off. So it's fun. She's changed a lot since, I initially like put her in, and then what is she going to do? But it again, it's just kind of funny to see how all this stuff came to be.
Mm-hmm. You don't think 5 health is maybe a little too low?
Well, I maybe, but I think my focus wasn't to necessarily be on Bess. Like it was to be on Houdini, and like I think she's really here now for just the certain matchups where you need another sidekick, or really is that defensive thing with Smoke and Mirrors. I think her being able to take. I saw one matchup. I think Zero Skater maybe was streaming it.
Yeah.
Or no, it was Tater Tot, I think, where I think it was a Dracula and Houdini, and Dracula's beast form into the Smoke and Mirrors totally nullifies what one of his strongest attacks does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like people. Well, I'm not great at this game. I'm not saying that it's a good strategy to keep Bess alive necessarily, but I think while she's not like, she's probably one of the least useful sidekicks. I think she has some. I think that kind of plays in her favor because she kind of has some sneaky moments, like being able to just absorb an insane amount of damage on one attack, or getting a really strong attack that your opponent might not expect. So. Yeah, 5 health might be a little low, but
just because I remember when I saw that's currently the lowest health for a single sidekick. Normally, the previous low was like 6, and I was like, oh come on, like how is she going to be able to stay alive now?
yeah, it's. I think it still works for the deck. Like I was always scared of making like. Houdini's also a fairly low HP. I was always scared of making it too much HP. I think 14 was what I originally submitted Houdini as, and it stayed that way. And I was always kind of cautious of like making that too high because of how hard he is to kind of deal damage to in some points.
Yeah.
Some points he's not, but his defenses aren't super high. But yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because like he can he can boost the Grand Escape. He can make
Hmm.
Bess take the attack with smoke and mirrors, and like he can even heal or come back to life with all part of the show. So I think 14 is like deceptively low. Like
Yeah,
he's like decently tanky in certain cases.
yeah, for sure.
Which I think it's really cool that you can play very aggressively and just boost a bunch of attacks and deal a bunch of damage, but you can also play like very protective with your
Yeah,
with your
yeah,
relatively
I know.
low
He's got a
HP.
lot of different options of how he wants to do things, which I think makes him so fun.
Yeah, he's so cool. So, do you want to talk about the design process at all, like with restoration games? Like how did that work after you submitted your deck? Like, what was the
Yeah.
testing process like?
So it was, first off, I don't think any of what they did was a part of their original plan. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
was, but I felt like they involved us so much more than they had to and brought us kind of behind the curtain, which was like so cool as a person who, had no idea what this process was like. And so it was like so super grateful of what they did and how much they involved us. I mean, we're still in kind of our private chat together, and people talk and have ideas and are still bouncing ideas back and forth on decks that are still kind of in development. Um, but kind of like I said, when they I originally got an email. I think it was like sometime in November that we were part of the final 36. And then we got notified in, I think it was January of 21, that we were the 4 winners, 8 runner ups. But it was really like 12 total winners. That's how hard it was to pick between all these great decks. And so that's when they kind of set up that big call, and everybody kind of got to meet everybody else, and put in face to who designed each deck, and they got to go through and talk about their development process and how they decided, or how they brought each deck to kind of like the initial design phase all the way through to the final product. And that was such a cool experience. We got to I think everybody got the option to kind of back out and let Restoration do their thing with their design, but I don't know that anybody actually did. I think everybody wanted to be a part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
so we all got to take our decks and kind of do 2 or 3 weeks of iterations and playing around with things and changing things and trying to not necessarily come up with new ideas, because that wasn't really what the development process was for, but more so trying to refine things and make them a little bit more cohesive. And so we all got a chance at doing that for a couple weeks, and then submitted kind of our final decks for Restoration to go through again. And then from there, at least from my standpoint, I don't know what the other winners are still doing, whose sets are still being worked on. But um, from there, it was just them kind of taking it, play testing. They sent it out for play testing. We kind of got to see some of the changes and hear about some of the things that were maybe problems, or maybe this was really fun or whatever. And we got to see the art super early, and know who the artist was, and see all that concept art, and so that was really cool. And then we get to go through like a final card council at the end of the design process, where they lay out all the cards, and they find, they look for spelling mistakes, or they look for inconsistencies, or maybe there's a number that's wrong, or is this exactly how we want to say this line? Does this line up with how we've previously said this on other cards, and all that? So I think we got to see way more than we definitely got to see way more than I anticipated behind the scenes, which was so cool to be a part of that process. And you know, I'm super thankful for them to even involve us, because when you've got to wrangle 12 people that have never done this before, I can imagine that's like sometimes they're probably hitting their forehead like, why did we do this? But it was so great, and I'm so thankful for them to involve us in that.
I know a pretty like I don't know, want to say like well-known design quote is that you have to kill your darlings to make like the best possible deck. Were there any darlings that you felt particularly bad about having to
Oh,
squander?
there were plenty. My original deck was so chock full of stuff. Um, the man, I think the one thing, so one of that pick a card I had mentioned earlier, I really that was the card that kind of inspired the deck, and I worked really hard to figure out something for that, and it never worked. But I think the card I was like most sad to cut was it was a card called Marked Card, and it basically um, shuffled into your opponent's deck. And Houdini had some stuff where, like, the big reveal originally was you got to reveal both cards on top of each deck. So your deck and the person you're attacking, and add their boost values to the big reveal and do any boost tricks. And so I had Marked Card as a card that like could be shuffled into your opponent's deck, and maybe you could time big reveal with it. So it would be like a huge boost value card, and then your cards, or it was a card that your opponent couldn't use. So when they draw it, it was kind of a dead card in their hand, and like if you got to reveal a card from their hand and do damage to them, you would reveal the marked card, and it'd be a 4 or whatever it was. So I loved that idea, and I went through so many wordings and so many like iterations to try to figure out how to make this as clear as possible. But it was always kind of clunky, and it never worked. And so I was disappointed that I couldn't get it to work. But that was probably the biggest one I couldn't figure out how to do. But it's totally a part of their process. That's their whole thing is you have to get rid of the things, even if you love them, sometimes they just don't work.
That sounds like such a cool idea. I
Yeah.
kind of wish we got to see that version of the deck, but like this one, I can't even complain about it. It's still so awesome.
Yeah. I've probably got it. I've got it somewhere. I've got it somewhere in my email, and there's probably some version of it on the Unmatched Maker. So maybe I'll dig it up.
So when you submitted the deck, it had the boost tricks idea with it, right?
Yeah, the original boost trick card was Sleight of Hand, and that was the one. I think I had two cards that dealt with like the boost tricks. I don't remember what the other one would have been, but Sleight of Hand I know was the one that lets you take it back. Um, and I think they loved that idea so much, and they wanted to kind of turn it up. So it's like, okay, what else can we add these boost tricks to? Because it makes his deck so different, and it makes everything so unique. And so I think we went through a couple options or iterations of like what some of the boost tricks could be. I think there was even one at one point that got cut, which was, I think it was a 0 value boost, but the boost trick was that you ignored your opponent's card value. Um, but then I think as we were kind of going through it, you know, and Houdini's using his cards to also boost his maneuvers, it was like, okay, that card is weird if it's not actually a combat, and then you've got to have this really long word you can explain that it only happens in combat. And so I think the ones they added, really make sense, and or the ones that ended up in the final thing really make sense. So, but yeah, I think Sleight of Hand, and I can't remember what the other one was, were the original like 2 boost trick cards with him.
Okay, because yeah, like at the time that mechanic didn't exist, so I was wondering like if they were like, oh, like this is amazing, like you thought of this
Yeah,
new rule, like we can
I tell you,
use
and
that.
that's like that's like what I was wanting to. That was my favorite thing about the
Mm-hmm.
designing it, was like, what are things I can do that don't actually like change the rules necessarily, but like open up some like a new part of the design. And I think that's what they really loved, was that I mean, I think what they came up with was so slick with the boost, or like the words in the boost box by the number, because
Mm-hmm.
my original design was just like a, some text that said, if this card was used to boost
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I love what they came up with. It's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's my favorite part of the like design contest is that you get people from outside with these new ideas that
Yeah.
kind of just blow the whole game wide open.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So what have you learned about game design and like the whole process of that from this experience?
Oh, oh boy. I wish I would have learned that I'm good at it, but I don't even know that I can say that. Um, I don't know. I think I learned like how I think I could say from this whole process, what I've learned is how great the community is. Like board
Mm-hmm.
gaming community in general, and Unmatched community specifically, is like everybody's so open. I was always like I said, I don't even think I'd published, and I still haven't published any of my like personal decks, but like everybody's so open and friendly and helpful and has ideas, and um, you know it's such a friendly community. And I uh, I think if there's anything I've, even with restoration, like they're a company that just invited a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing in to the behind the scenes. And um, I think, you know being able to learn how they the whole process of how they bring this from design to final product has been like awesome. It's been awesome to learn that, and it's been such a great process to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. So what have you learned about yourself from this whole experience?
Oh man. Um I will say, if I learned anything, I think just a little bit of perseverance. I
Mm-hmm.
think I really struggled with, initially with this contest, and I spent so much time on it and did so many iterations of it, and like just kept pounding away at, like, I'd have to step away and then come back, and step away and come back, and not giving up. And I think, um, you know I got there eventually, and it just took a lot of time and a lot of breaks, and it took me. There were new ideas I would come up with 3 weeks later, and after I was even done development. So, um, just the fact of, I'm not in a creative industry. I've not like worked. I don't work creatively too often,
Mm-hmm.
and I really enjoyed it. But uh, it was learning to kind of trust my creativity a little bit and continue with it, and not get discouraged through, being stuck or feeling like I'm in a rut for going through these designs. So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't know if that's deep or anything, but
I think it is.
that's probably the other thing is that I really enjoy a creative part of doing things. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
um, so what have you learned about Houdini through this whole process?
Oh, I did a ton of research on Houdini. I was I've past couple weeks since this has got revealed, I've
Mm-hmm.
been like every day Googling Houdini Unmatched and seeing what comes up new. It's probably a little obsessive, but um, I did so much research on Houdini, and I remember when I was initially like trying to figure out a character, and like seeing, like, is Houdini going to work for this kind of
Mm-hmm.
deck that I've made? Um, Reading a lot about his life, um, I did all this research for all of his like famous escapes so I could make those defense cards. I did research about his early life. It's like, are these card tricks going to work? Is this weird? What else about his life with Bess and his later life with like, trying to prove all the spiritual things wrong. I didn't know if I could work that into the deck. And I was so excited because one of the websites I think I went to, I can't remember the exact name. It was like Wild About Houdini or something like that. They had like a bunch of information on him. It was like Houdini fans. And I saw like a week or two ago they had made a post of my board game or like the unmatched board game for Houdini and Genie about Houdini, and it's like, I know, like, I'm not even a board gamer, but this is so cool. Like this might be I have to buy this for the art and for the mini. So I was like impressed, or I was so happy that I impressed Houdini fans. I at least did him a service of this website that I looked at 2 years ago to figure out if Houdini would work. So at least I did something right.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So going forward, are you gonna continue making custom decks, or is this kind of like this is your all time high and like nothing's gonna top this? So what's
I know.
the point?
I've got to. It's like Seinfeld, George Costanza. I got to quit while I'm ahead. I think like I do it. I still do it on my own, just for like my own. Like I said, even though I don't really like post much, I just do it because I find it fun. And so I don't know. Maybe I'll post some of my decks. I don't know that they'll be good, but maybe people will find. Maybe it'll be like Restoration. They'll find some of my ideas interesting and be able to like run with it and refine it. So maybe we'll see.
Okay, the future is uncertain, but I still think it looks bright for you in the deck regard.
Yeah.
So what tips would you give to someone who is trying to design their own deck?
Oh, well, I think that's tough because I think I don't know, everybody's got kind of like their own process. It
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting to hear about um, when we originally got on the Zoom call with, everybody from Restoration, with Justin and Rob and Noah and Brian, kind of, they each had different ways of like designing a deck and how they did it. Justin's kind of one of the guys that writes all these cool names down and then, finds out what to do with those. And so I'd say, as far as tips designing, um, I guess Unmatched specifically, I think what really works so well for this game is not trying to do too much within a specific deck.
Mm-hmm.
Really kind of picking one or two things to focus on and kind of turning those up and, making it fun to play with. Because, like I said, my initial deck was just a hodgepodge of a bunch of ideas that, half of them got cut. So I think being able to, focus on maybe one or two things and, really make it cohesive and fun is what makes these characters fun to play as.
Mm-hmm. It's all about fun.
Yeah, I know that's the great thing with Unmatched is like it's the rules are so easy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much like creativity in each one of these decks, and that's what makes it so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the most powerful card in this deck?
I don't know. I've thought about that a little bit. I think
Like
the
what's the
two
card that people are gonna say like this is broken like online?
I think the one that like people probably who've not played the deck very much thinks broken is sleight of hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the one that like all your kind of alarm bells go off of like this looks harsh to play against. I don't think it's that bad. I think Houdini's best card is the big reveal for that. I think that's his most important card because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the majority of his damage can come from and like being able to get boost effects back. I think that's kind of like that's the card he needs. That's the card he does not want to get fainted. That's like one of his most important ones. But I think set the stage is like also kind of incredible
Mm-hmm.
because of the because of that boost effect of you being able to. I've seen so many people who play this deck. Um, Set the stage is basically used to boost in to go attacking and make sure that your opponent does not have a feint and or some super strong defense, and that is insanely important with Houdini because if he gets one or God forbid both of his big reveals nullified, man, that's he's in trouble. So
Mm-hmm.
those two are definitely, I think, the strongest cards in the deck and the most important cards in the deck.
Okay. And what is your favorite card in the deck?
I think my favorite card is still an illusion of my own design. I love
Mm-hmm.
that one. I think it creates such an interesting decision of like, does the opponent has to make that decision of do they boost first? And I
Mm-hmm.
love that decision because it's a you know 2 for 1 and if they boost it, or it's a lot of damage if they don't boost it. And I love that decision. I think that's why I love Houdini so much, is to
Mm-hmm.
create so many interesting decisions.
Yeah, I would agree.
Hmm.
And this is probably going to be my most critical question of the day, but why is there no regroup in this deck?
I so that that's actually part of what we talked about within our initial meeting. So I don't think there was ever a regroup in this deck. I could be wrong, but I don't think I ever submitted it with a
Mm-hmm.
regroup. And what I didn't do that like consciously. I think I just had a lot of ideas for
Mm-hmm.
cards and wanted it to fit. But as from a design perspective, I think Restoration uses Regroup to kind of consolidate the power in some of the other cards because
Mm-hmm.
Regroup is so weak.
What
And
are you talking about? It's the best card in the game.
I think I can't. I don't think Genie has a regroup now that I think about it. But it allows them not having or having a regroup kind of
Mm-hmm.
allows them to like push that power into other parts of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think first off, I just didn't have a regroup because I had so many cool ideas I wanted to smash in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of Houdini's cards. First off, I think he has enough draw, even though regroup only replaces one or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he all of his cards are kind of spread out pretty evenly as far as power outliers. I know big reveal is really good, but there's only two of them. Set the stage is really good, but there's only two of them. Um, I think that's probably why, but also just from the design perspective of I wanted to do something else other than a regroup.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's no regroup.
It's all right.
You don't get to see the Houdini regroup art.
Oh man, it's only my favorite card in the entire game. So obviously this deck is it's available for pre-order. It's probably being shipped as we speak. But
Mhm.
if there was anything you could change about it right now, would there be something to change?
I think the I think there is one thing I would change.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I think this deck ended up miles better than what I ever could have come up with my own,
Mm-hmm.
and so even though I designed it, I'm not the end all be all authority of it. But I really wish set the stage would let you the ability would let you shuffle one card from your discard pile back into your deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that scares me a little bit about Houdini is how important his big reveals are. And I think set the stage is so good only for. It's one of those cards that's used 99% of the time for the boost trick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I could have worked in a, like if if that allowed you to shuffle a card back into your deck, the threat of the big reveals maybe getting fainted or just nullified wouldn't feel like so stressful, and it would also give you a reason to reconsider not using set the stage for the boost value.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just don't think there's any like real reason to want to use it for that effect. And like if you got like for the Genie matchup, if you got for some reason like Sultans is the one that reveals your hand and discards a card. And if for some reason in that game, if you got both of your big reveals discarded, then I think that would create an interesting decision of, okay, maybe I want to use Bess while she's still alive to try to get one of those back. Or maybe there's another card I want to try to get back. I don't know. I don't know how that would have worked in testing. Maybe that would have been way too strong to get, a really powerful card back a third time, or, with the two copies. But I also think it would have like given Bess a reason to try to exist into the late game too, instead of sacrificing her so early, because she would have the ability to get maybe a key card back. So that's probably the only thing I would have liked to see maybe during the play testing, and I didn't even think of it until after everything was already said and done, and after I'd seen it played a few times. But and I just to maybe give Bess like a little bit more of a reason to stick around. But that's I think beyond that, they hit it out of the park with this deck. I think it's so good, and with Genie too, I think both of them are just so well done.
And this is probably the most important question of the day. But obviously this is a 2-pack, so it's going to be Houdini versus the Genie. What tips do you have for all the Houdini players in the Genie match? How do they beat the Genie?
Oh man, I gotta tell you, I'm not as good at this game as people might think I am. I tell you, I've seen, I think it was Floam maybe that plays Houdini a lot, that I've seen like on replays and stuff, and he's done things that I didn't even like really think about sometimes. Like as many options as Houdini has, I was like, oh wow, that's really strong. I didn't really think of that combination. So I am not the authority on how to beat Genie with this. I wish people the best of luck. I hope that it's not a total blowout, but no, I think one of the things that Restoration liked about Houdini and the Genie is they, aside from the rhyming, they worked well together as far as like Houdini can maybe stop some of Genie's like triple attack turns with Grand Escape, and Houdini's really mobile and that works well against Genie, and so I think they're a pretty even matchup. The map's tough, but I think I'm in your corner if you're playing Houdini. I'll just wish you luck, but I don't think I've got the skill or the know-how to actually give important tips on how to win.
Okay, so just know if you're ever playing Houdini, Sam is just like he's
I'm
with you.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I might not have any things to do right, but I know I thought about. I think Restoration has given us a couple copies of the game, and I thought about going to our local game shop and just saying like, hey, if you can beat me, I'll give you a free copy, kind of a deal. And my wife, I think, said, do you think people are going to beat you? I'm like, oh, they'll beat me. They'll beat me. You don't have to worry about that. If you're a warm body, you'll probably beat me.
You're a generous man.
Yeah.
So, Sam, is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we go?
I don't think so. I think this has been a blast to talk about this stuff. Like I said, it's been under wraps for 2 years now, and I've not talked about it too much. So I'm super excited to be able to talk to you and for everybody else to kind of maybe see a little bit more behind the scenes. Hopefully I didn't say anything secretive, but I don't think I did. But um, no, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk. This has been a blast.
Wonderful. Well, if this video gets like a lawsuit or anything, I'll direct it to your
Yeah, there
office.
you go. Just like mute me if I said anything weird.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the insights. It was really interesting to talk to you today, and hopefully everyone can go pick up a copy and see the amazing deck that you helped design.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
So that was a really wonderful conversation. Sam was just a really pleasant guy to talk to, and it was awesome to get to know him and his deck a little bit better. So stay tuned. Later this week, I will be interviewing Adil, the creator of the Genie deck. And again, there's just going to be some valuable insights and just interesting little tidbits of information about the deck. So this was a really cool experience that I got to do interviewing both of them. And hopefully in the future, there will be more designers for me to interview as well. So stay tuned for the Genie video tomorrow. And as always, like, subscribe, and yay!